no, it's you!
Well, you are kind of in my neighborhood.
Hey there guys, Nordic Warrior here, welcome back to my video game review series. So today we're going to be looking at Ultimate Spider-Man. This game was released back in 2005, developed by Treyarch. So Ultimate Spider-Man, just like most modern day Spidey games, is an open world action-adventure game based on the Ultimate Spider-Man comic book. Now, I'm not too familiar with the Ultimate comic, so I can't comment on the comic itself. Nonetheless, I remember being so excited for this game back when it came out and I saw the trailer. In all honesty, this is most likely because of the fact that you can play as both Spider-Man and Venom. And with me being a huge fan of both characters as a kid, I had to get my hands on this game at some point. Unfortunately though, Ultimate Spider-Man is a game that I personally have mixed feelings on. It's a game that has several things about it that I really like, but at the same time there are several things I absolutely hated about the game. The story of the game involves Spider-Man and Venom as they work separately to take down Bolivar Trask and his forces. You have several villains from the Spider-Man comics, as well as several from other Marvel comics as well. The game is basically split up into two modes, Spider-Man's open world sections and Venom's levels, which are more linear and brief. Playing as Spider-Man follows the classic Spider-Man game format, which was pretty much set by Spider-Man 2 the previous year. You have to swing around the city, fighting crime, rescuing civilians, performing side activities and completing story missions. Spider-Man's overall gameplay is pretty solid for the most part, though I do have some problems with it. The game's combat and fighting mechanics are not much different to Spider-Man 2's, with Spider-Man beating enemies to a pulp with melee attacks and incapacitating them with web attacks, as well as grappling attacks. The combat is quite flashy and stylish and looks pretty cool for the most part. It helps that the regular enemies of the game are much weaker than Spidey, so they're easy to beat and you genuinely feel like a badass against them. But sadly they took out some of the cool grappling abilities from Spider-Man 2. Like being able to pick up enemies and take them up to the top of a building. I'm not sure why. They also added a new feature where after knocking out an enemy you have to web them up in a certain amount of time in order to stop them from recovering and having to do it all again. I'm not sure why they added this feature and I'm not sure what it really adds to combat other than just making it more tedious, but for some reason Treyarch thought this was a good idea. I just don't get it. It actually gets quite annoying when you knock out a bunch of enemies but you forget to web one of them up and you end up having to fight him all over again. It just gets tedious after a while and I kinda wish they didn't add that to the game. You do get a decent amount of enemy variety in terms of their aesthetic design, but in all honesty the combat is pretty much all the same. All in all, the game's regular combat is basically a watered down version of other Spidey games with having to web up every enemy after defeating them for extra tedium. Spidey's story levels usually have something to do with him having to chase down a particular villain, then taking them on in a boss battle. You often have to rescue civilians along the way. Usually you'll have a time limit of sorts, either having to rescue the civilians before they die, or keep up with a villain before they escape. In fact, in retrospect, the level design of this game is extremely repetitive and there isn't really much to distinguish most of the levels. The boss battles on the other hand are actually pretty good, for the most part, with the exception of the Green Goblin boss battle. That battle can suck it. Other than that, I enjoyed them for what they are, and they are quite intense and brutal. You fight the likes of Shocker, Rhino, Beetle, Silver Sable and several others. You also fight Venom multiple times throughout the game. You also have several boss battles as Venom, such as Wolverine, who wants revenge after Venom smashes up his bike.
You don't say.
Silver Sable again, Electro, Beetle again, and Carnage. I actually prefer Venom's boss battles to Spidey's, I just thought they were a lot more fun. Venom's levels themselves are much more linear and purely combat based. His gameplay is very different from Spider-Man's with only a few similarities. Instead of web swinging, Venom traverses levels using a super jump ability, as well as wall crawling. This applies also to the chase sections of the game. Some of these are a complete pain in the ass because these sections were clearly designed for Spidey. For example, there's a level in this game where you have to chase Electro through the city as Venom. At times he stays close to the ground, at others he goes high up and Venom will have to jump across rooftops to catch him. If you miss one rooftop, the game thinks you're too far away and you'll fail, making it a frustrating trial and error. There are a lot of levels like this, and if I'm being honest, it makes an extremely short game feel much longer than it is, making it seem like padding in the worst way. Venom's overall combat mechanics are probably the best thing about the game. He can punch enemies as well as hit them with his tentacles from a distance, doing huge amounts of damage. He also has several pretty badass grappling attacks. Venom can also throw cars at enemies and even manually target them. Sadly, Venom has a tedious mechanic of his own. As time goes by, the suit will slowly drain Venom's health, meaning you will have to consume random civilians to survive. I absolutely hated this feature and I just wish it had been cut from the game, as all it does is irritate you during gameplay. The game even forces you to flat out murder an innocent child at one point. I'm sure Treyarch thought they were being funny, but I digress. Once you complete the main story, you actually unlock the ability to free roam around the city as Venom, but sadly this is nowhere near as cool as it sounds. You do get several races you can try out as Venom, and a sort of Grand Theft Auto style wanted meter. Cause chaos around the city and unlock points, depending on the amount of damage you cause. This can be fun for a while, but it gets old very quick. As Spidey, you have a bunch of side activities to take part in, including combat tours where you basically patrol the city beating up gang members. This was fun the first few times, but again, gets repetitive very fast. You also have numerous trick races to take part in for medals. Some of them are quite fun, others are so unfairly difficult that they just feel like another way to pad out the game. You also have several of these races as Venom, as I mentioned earlier, and to be honest, the less said about those the better. You have several races against the Human Torch, which you have to complete to unlock more difficult races as well as higher swing speeds. Personally, I hated these races, and they are in fact, in my personal opinion, some of the worst designed races I have ever experienced in a video game, as if they were specifically designed just to piss you off. Speaking of pissing you off, the game has several unlockable costumes, but the amount of boring, tedious, and flat out repetitive grinding you have to do to unlock them just isn't worth it. I wasted so much time as a kid waiting for these random events, completing the same boring, repetitive ass combat tours over and over again, and yeah, I'm not doing it again. It takes way too long to unlock any of the costumes and it just isn't fun in my opinion. You do have quite a lot of collectibles to find, which each individually serve their own function. These are scattered all over the place, but good luck finding them all without a guide is all I'm going to say about that. You do have an incentive, I guess, to unlock some interesting features such as concept art, which is quite fun to look at, as well as character trophies that you can view in the menu. Features like this are always appreciated by me. Also, just like in Spider-Man 2, which had a trailer for X-Men Legends, in this game you have a trailer for X-Men Legends 2 Rise of Apocalypse, so that was pretty cool. The graphics and presentation of the game are fine. The game has a very unique and cool visual style resembling a comic book. The game's cutscenes are even shown in a comic book format. The voice acting is very good for the most part, and the game has some pretty funny dialogue here and there.
Hey you! Is that a rhinoceros horn or you just happen to be... I'm so scared I can't even finish my lame joke.
Ultimate Spider-Man is a bit of a mixed bag. You can see the potential for a great game here, and it has some things that it can genuinely lay claim to, but unfortunately the game has way too many tedious aspects, and the overall gameplay really isn't anything special. I give Ultimate Spider-Man a very generous 5 out of 10. That's going to be a very controversial score because I know that there are definitely a lot of Spidey fans that love this game, but for me the game's very overrated and it just never lived up to the hype. Thanks for watching, guys. Despite all the problems Ultimate Spider-Man has in my opinion, I still really enjoyed checking it out again. Stay tuned for more retrospective video game reviews. I have a lot of reviews coming to the channel in the near future, and will more than likely return to the Spidey series at some point. Thanks for watching, stay tuned for more reviews, and God bless.